This is the Mop Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. The U.S. Navy has seized an Iranian-flagged cargo ship attempting to get past the American blockade of Iran's Strait of Hormuz that was announced today by Donald Trump, actually late Sunday afternoon. Meanwhile, he's threatening to commit massive war crimes on top of the war crimes he's already committed. He said if Iran doesn't negotiate a peace deal, Iran saying late Sunday afternoon, it will never cede control of the Strait of Hormuz. On today's show, get ready to pay $6 for a gallon of gas as the Strait of Hormuz shows no sign of reopening. First, Iran opened it after Israel and Lebanon signed a ceasefire last week, but Trump said, no, my Navy is still enforcing the blockade because he's insane. Despite declaring victory over Iran, Trump is desperately trying to jumpstart peace talks with the Iranians. He announced peace talks would resume in Islamabad on Monday. But Iran says there are no peace talks. Trump said, yes, there are. There are peace talks, and you agreed to it. And Iran said, no, we didn't. And Trump announced that not only are there going to be peace talks in Islamabad on Monday, but J.D. Vance, our vice president, will lead the delegation. But Iran said there are no peace talks. And then later in the day, Trump said, well, the peace talks are still on, but J.D. Vance won't be going to Islamabad to lead the talks, but only because of security reasons. There's still peace talks, but we couldn't guarantee security for J.D. Vance, so he's staying back. Great. So America can't keep our vice president safe in Pakistan. How do we beat the Iranians in Hormuz if we can't even send J.D. Vance to Pakistan? Then, this is all on Sunday. Then Trump realizing, well, it doesn't sound good if I say we can't keep Vance safe in Islamabad. That doesn't sound good. So he immediately announced, no. Vance is going to attend Monday's peace talks that Iran says are not taking place in Islamabad on Monday. All this with about 72 hours left on the clock before that ceasefire between Iran and the United States expires. The Wall Street Journal out with new reporting that Donald Trump actually realizes he's in trouble. I didn't think he's capable of that. But people inside the White House privately saying Trump knows he screwed up by launching this illegal war, and they're saying he knows he doesn't have a clue how to fix the mess he created. Well, you could always resign. That's one way. Now, we have heard Trump publicly admit in March that he was shocked by how easy it was for the Iranians to shut down Hormuz. He said that openly to the press after a cabinet meeting. He said, Iran doesn't need a navy. This is what Donald Trump said. They don't need a navy. All they need is, quote, one guy and a drone. He literally marveled at the power Iran has over the Strait of Hormuz. He's marveling. Weeks after he began this war, he's marveling that Iran can close Hormuz and our conventional navy is powerless. He repeatedly said, after he started this war and Iran shut down Hormuz, he's repeatedly said nobody thought they would shut down Hormuz. We were completely surprised by this. He's a liar and an idiot. Everyone told Trump not to do this. Everyone said, if you begin bombing Iran, if you start killing their leadership, which, by the way, is against American law. In the 70s, we outlawed killing, assassinating foreign leaders or dropping bombs on foreign leaders. Remember, we kept trying to kill Castro, so we outlawed that. Anyway, he was warned, if you start bombing Iran and decapitating the leadership in direct violation of international law, Iran will also violate international law by shutting down Hormuz. And he said they wouldn't dare. He's an idiot. He said, I know everything. And you're all, he said to his generals, you're chickens, you're cowards, you're babies. He said, if Iran shuts down Hormuz, the entire world, which is telling me not to start bombing Iran, if Iran is stupid enough to shut down Hormuz, then the entire world would join me in my war against Iran because they would blame Iran for the global economy grinding to a halt. But instead, the world, who told him not to do this because they would shut down Hormuz, the world is blaming Trump, not Iran. They're saying, you're on your own, bucko. We told you not to do this. We're not fighting your fight. And so it's dawning on Trump, at least according to the Wall Street Journal, that he's stuck, that he's a cornered rat. Vladimir Putin once gave an interview where he said, growing up in poverty, he learned that there's nothing more dangerous than a cornered rat. And Donald Trump, once again, is a cornered rat who will say and do anything to survive. We know what Trump will do when he's cornered. We saw it on January 6th. We saw it in 2024 when he realized the only way he was staying out of prison was by winning the election. He will do whatever it takes for Trump, not America, not our planet, to survive. Now, Trump loves military parades. He ordered one last year for his birthday. There's going to be a massive one this year around July 4th because his birthday is coinciding with our country's 250th. He loves to see all our tanks and our missiles and our soldiers because he's materialistic. And he thinks all you have to do is buy the best weapons and then we can defeat anybody. Like Iran, you just need the best. That's because he's stupid. And it's slowly dawning on the American taxpayer who foots the bill for these weapons that wars are not won with bombs or tanks or fighter jets. They are won by sacrificing the lives of our soldiers. You have to send ground troops in to win a war. And even then, you're probably not going to win it. Trump is terrified of sending in ground troops. And nobody in their right mind is advising Trump that American ground troops, the Marines, should be sent in to seize Hormuz or the island of Kharg. Some people have suggested, they're not in their right minds, that we should send in commandos, drop them into one of Iran's nuclear enrichment sites and seize the uranium. This is something Pete Hegseth has intimated being on the table, but Pete Hegseth is not in the right mind. He's a little insane. So nobody in their right mind is saying we need to send Marines, ground troops, into Iran. Well, there is the alcoholic and closeted Lindsey Graham who says we should sacrifice American soldiers to seize the island of Kharg or Hormuz. But I'm talking about people in their right mind, not alcoholic closet cases like Lindsey Graham, whose brain has been picked clean by his bourbon-soaked demons of self-loathing. Senator Lindsey Graham says it's worth American soldiers dying in order to seize the island of Kharg, which produces 90% of Iran's oil. He told Fox News, yes, of course, American soldiers are going to die, but it's worth it, the same way it was worth it during World War II when American soldiers died taking Iwo Jima. Lindsey Graham's not sending his children to go fight in Iran because he's an alcoholic closet case who doesn't have kids, and that's because he hates himself. And because he hates himself, he's perfectly fine watching American soldiers die for absolutely no reason. Nobody who understands the geography, the topography of the Strait of Hormuz or Kharg would ever suggest sending American soldiers in there. It has dawned on everyone except Lindsey Graham, everyone in Congress, Republican and Democrat, that our soldiers would be slaughtered trying to take Hormuz or the island of Kharg, and it's not worth it. Nobody thinks we can seize and hold Hormuz or Kharg without massive casualties, and there's no guarantee if we do take them, we can hold those positions without suffering even more massive casualties. Everyone, even hawks, are saying it's not worth it. This war was a mistake. Cut your losses. Get out. Everybody's saying that except the magical thinker, Lindsey Graham, seen here enjoying his special Lindsey Graham suite at Mar-a-Lago. This is a suite that Trump personally furnished himself for Lindsey at Mar-a-Lago. Closeted and self-loathing alcoholic Lindsey Graham says we should send in the Marines to take Kharg Island. Quote, "We did Iwo Jima, we can do this. My money is always on the Marines," unquote. Your money is always on the Marines. You're betting on the Marines? So there's Lindsey in the Senate who wants to send in ground troops, and there's one other guy in the House, Texas Republican Pat Fallon, who said last week, quote, "I just don't see any other way. I personally think it's going to be boots, at least special ops, American special operators on the ground with allies in the region and air cover. We have to change the tact of the Tehran government or we can't leave. We can't leave until the job is done," unquote. Congressman Fallon says we send in the troops and give them plenty of air cover. Well, let's hope the air cover is better than this congressman's hair cover. Is that even a toupee? It looks like a ceramic mold he found at Pottery Barn. Hi, I'm Texas House Republican Pat Fallon. Vote for me. I'll never lie to you, except every time I walk into a room with this twisted divot of AstroTurf on my head. You're not just lying to everyone in the room, Congressman. You're lying to yourself. You're delusional. You think nobody knows that's a toupee? It's not even good enough to be called a toupee. It's a one pay, a zero pay. You're delusional, which is why you're convinced we need to commit ground troops in Iran and finish the job that we should never have started. So the map. Let's look at the map because geography is destiny. That's Iran, right there. And that's the Persian Gulf on the left. And in order for tankers to make it to market, they have to sail along the Arabian Sea, but first they must pass through the Gulf of Oman. And in order to get from the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, they have to go into the Strait of Hormuz, which, in case you haven't been watching this show, the Strait of Hormuz is what they in the military call a kill box. 21 miles wide, ships, warships, anytime they're passing through the Strait of Hormuz, they become sitting ducks as they slowly navigate this incredibly shallow two-lane maritime highway. And our most sophisticated naval destroyers cannot defend against one errant short-range missile getting fired from one of the hundreds, if not thousands, of positions up there in the mountainous region of Iran, looking down on this the Strait of Hormuz. So this, I know I keep showing you these maps, but somebody's got to do it, okay? Up there is the Strait of Hormuz, and then you see the mountains, and buried into those mountains are mobile missile launchers that can go be wheeled out from underneath a mountaintop. They can fire a missile at one of our ships in the Strait of Hormuz, and before our satellites can spot the flash of heat from which these missiles are fired, those missile launchers are already back inside the mountain, where our military would then need to drop $20 million bunker busters. But there's no guarantee a bunker buster can pierce through more than 60 feet of reinforced concrete carved underneath a mountain. See, you're bombing the top of a mountain with a bunker buster, but those missile launchers are deep inside those mountains. They've been rolled in through man-made caves, and so they're more than 200 feet underneath those mountains, far out of reach from our multi-million-dollar bunker busters, which we're probably running out of. This, unfortunately, is what we call asymmetrical warfare, which means our Navy cannot fight in the Strait of Hormuz. This is not a job for our Navy. This isn't D-Day, where battleships off the coast of Normandy pound the German positions, soften them for a ground invasion. The reason it's not D-Day is we have interceptors that need time to establish the coordinates for an incoming missile, but the Iranians are going to be firing short-range missiles and drones. The battleships on D-Day were not this close to the coast. You can't, and we depend on interceptors. Yes, our destroyers can knock most of the missiles out of the sky, but most isn't good enough. All it takes is one to get through. Pete Hegseth and Trump keep insisting we've wiped out 90% of Iran's Navy. But again, this isn't about Navy. You don't need a Navy. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard, by the way, is the Ayatollah's private paramilitary organization. It's separate from Iran's official army, navy, and air force. So, yes, the traditional Navy of Iran sits, as Donald Trump boasts, at the bottom of the sea. But the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, which has been planning this since 1979, they have, according to reports that I'm reading, according to what I've been told, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, which is separate and more powerful than Iran's army, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has a 50,000-man stealth force of inexpensive speedboats, some of them manned, some of them unmanned. The unmanned speedboats are packed with explosives. Those would be suicide speedboats. These speedboats, they also have jet skis. They're housed inside caves along the shores of Hormuz. Bunker busters can't reach down there. And these ships are fast and deadly. These jet skis are fast and deadly. The ships can go 115 miles per hour, 115 miles per hour. There are also unmanned submersibles that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has, and they're packed with explosives. They're hidden somewhere inside the caves along the Strait of Hormuz. And then, just to make sure Hormuz remains a kill box, you have those mobile missile launchers from above, right? And they can launch swarms of suicide drones, which have been compared to mosquitoes, small and fast, and they're too many to swat out of the sky. Right now, our ships are reportedly passing through Hormuz, sweeping for mines. The Iranians have reportedly fired upon several commercial tankers, but they're not firing on our naval ships, maybe lulling our military into a sense of complacency, because all it takes is one submersible, one unmanned jet ski packed with explosives, a suicide drone, one missile to do serious damage to one of our naval destroyers, which will find it next to impossible taking evasive action inside the narrow strait that is Hormuz. It's called a kill box for a reason. This is why Trump, at least according to the Wall Street Journal, is feeling powerless and scared. Now, Trump is sick in the head, which means deep down in that enfeebled brain, underneath the folds of insanity, Trump's scared, lonely, and knows he screwed up. But in order for those emotions to surface, to reach his consciousness, those emotions must pass through the folds of his insanity, and they get corrupted. Those emotions get corrupted, and so he ends up seeing some other reality. And he manifests this by reacting inappropriately to what deep down inside he knows to be the truth. But it's those folds of insanity. It's like the Strait of Hormuz. The truth deep down must pass through the folds of insanity in order to rise to the top. And by the time they pass through the folds of insanity, it gets twisted into lies, rage, anger, and blaming everybody but himself. But deep down, he knows. Deep down, he knows he screwed up. But all he knows how to do is act like Joey Gallo, crazy Joey Gallo. With 72 hours left in this ceasefire, and nobody quite sure if peace talks will be taking place on Monday in Islamabad. Nobody knows whether J.D. Vance will be there. Trump is doing what he only knows how to do, and that is threatening war crimes, which is a war crime. According to the Geneva Conventions, you cannot threaten war crimes. He declared over the weekend that Hormuz will be opened. It will happen, he said, one way or the other, the nice way or the hard way. It's going to happen. You can quote me, unquote. Well, I just quoted you, and guess what? It's not going to open. You've been saying this since they closed it. You've been giving ultimatums since they closed it. Trump is threatening to do what Scipio purportedly did to the Tunisians in 156 BC during the Third Punic War. Okay, did I impress everybody? Now, do you think I'm smart now? Should we move on? I don't even know if I pronounced Scipio properly. Wasn't Scipio from Family Ties? Scipio, wasn't he Michael J. Fox's friend? Anyway, there is no historical record of Scipio ever salting Carthage, but it's a term that I use on this show all the time. Most historians date the myth of salting Carthage to the 1850s. But the term salting Carthage is real. Scipio didn't really salt Carthage, but we talk about salting Carthage. It means total war, flooding the land, Carthage, Tunisia, with so much seawater, no crops will ever grow from all the salt. That's what salting Carthage means. It means that's how Trump likes to say he fights. I'm going to salt Carthage. So, theoretically, he could salt Carthage or Iran. Theoretically, he could nuke Iran. He could wipe Iran off the face of the map. Of course, the deadly radioactivity will spread into Russia. They won't like that. It will spread to the Persian Gulf, Israel, and we will find radioactivity as far as here in the United States. It blows and ends up in our water and crops. Remember Chernobyl, which was not a nuclear bomb? They were finding radioactivity in the milk in Europe. So the problem with dropping one nuclear bomb on Iran is he's going to have to drop more than one. And then the place becomes completely uninhabitable. You can't go in there to save anybody. So yes, theoretically, he could do that. He can also do what he's threatening to do again, which he threatened to do before the last ultimatum. He is right now doing what he did before the last ultimatum, right before the ceasefire. He's threatening to bomb Iran's desalination plants. By the way, Iran has done that to Kuwait. You think the Persian Gulf cares about oil. It's those desalination plants. That's the liquid gold. He's threatening to bomb Iran's power grid. He, as you know, is threatening to wipe out the core infrastructure inside Iran, which makes life sustainable. It's why he says, I will wipe out your civilization. That is a massive war crime. Threatening that is a massive war crime. And we've seen MAGA Republicans, Trump supporters, who have been offended by this. Who knew that they could be offended by this? So theoretically, on paper, he could do that. But Trump is a paper tiger, meaning we saw what happened with that last ultimatum, and he is a tiger. He's ferocious, but only on paper, only theoretically is he a tiger. We saw with that last ultimatum, this has been underreported, but it's true. A lot of generals and a lot of lawyers in the Pentagon bit back 2 weeks ago on the last ultimatum, and they said, you are asking us to obey illegal orders, which we cannot follow. Now, they do follow them on those illegal airstrikes in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific, taking out narco-terrorists. Everybody who works in the Pentagon should be frog-marched before The Hague. Every single lawyer who hasn't quit the Pentagon should be put on trial here in the United States for violating war crime statutes passed in the 1990s. Those killings in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific are war crimes, domestic and international. You're not allowed to fire on boats just because you think they're narco-terrorists, which we know most of them are not. And that's why they killed the survivors. Can't have survivors because survivors tell the truth. Survivors turn out to be innocent fishermen. So what happened before that last ultimatum, which resulted in this ceasefire, is a lot of the generals and lawyers inside the Pentagon began to worry that they could be held liable for these war crimes. And they said, no, you cannot bomb these power grids, these even though they are bombing schools. I think they knocked out 100,000 civilian buildings in Iran in 5 weeks. But they said, we cannot follow these orders. When Iranians, on the day of the previous ultimatum, they created human shields around their power plants. And our military realized they would have to kill civilians, which would be another war crime on top of the war crime of taking out the power plants. And there is reporting that Hegseth and Trump were told no. That makes Trump a paper tiger, which means he can growl and threaten, but he's made of paper. He's a paper tiger. And it is slowly dawning on the American taxpayer who is paying for all this garbage. It's slowly dawning on the American taxpayer that when it comes to this $1 trillion a year we're spending on our military, Trump wants to bump it up to $1.5 trillion a year. It's slowly dawning on the American taxpayer that America, not just Trump, has become a paper tiger vis-a-vis the world. Our military, our $1 trillion a year military, has turned us into a paper tiger. On paper, we're ferocious. But when it comes to actually forcing our will on other nations, we're powerless. And a lot of Americans, especially MAGA Republicans who voted for Trump, have begun to see there is no benefit to this massive buildup of weapons unless you own stock in Boeing, Lockheed Martin, or Raytheon. Raytheon changed its name, but it's still Raytheon. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to ask, wait, we're spending all this money on weapons. We have a crumbling infrastructure because we can't afford to build new schools, but we have plenty of money to give to the military-industrial complex, and yet we can't get the Strait of Hormuz open. Interesting. And our military-industrial complex can't restock and help us reload because they're so busy selling their weapons and bombs to Finland, Sweden, Germany, France, Korea, Israel. We're just a customer, and not a good customer, because in order for this war to continue, Congress has to pass that $200 billion war supplemental, and I don't think that's likely. So the American military-industrial complex is thinking, why should we cancel our contracts with good-paying customers like Finland, Sweden, Ukraine, and speed up deliveries for America when I don't think they're going to pay their bills. I don't think we're going to get that $200 billion war supplemental passed. So we are, once again, at a seminal moment, a tipping point. We never seem to learn from our tipping points, but until Iran says so, Hormuz will not open until Iran says so. And that is infuriating because, you know, if you believe in weapons, if you believe all you have to do is give the military-industrial complex trillions of dollars, what we say is the final word. Turns out it's not. Turns out it's not. Turns out that deal that Obama struck with Iran, that the UN signed, that Russia signed in 2015 with Iran, Europe, EU, the United Kingdom signed with Iran, turned out that deal was pretty smart, was pretty good. Only person who didn't like it was Netanyahu and Trump and some Fox News correspondents because Barack Obama is black. So Gideon Rockman writes in the Financial Times, great writer, and he is suggesting this could be the pivotal moment when not just the American people, but our leaders who never listen to us, our leaders, especially our future presidents, They might remember this precise moment when our $1 trillion a year military couldn't defeat Iran, which spends roughly $30 billion a year on its military. Usually spend $20 billion a year, but they're having a busy season. Usually it's $20 billion, but in the past 2 years they've had to spend more. Gideon Rockman is writing that future presidents, assuming there are any, will remember this moment. This moment, because current presidents forgot Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan, another teaching moment, but future presidents hopefully will remember that the purpose of the American military is to defend the United States, not control the destinies of other civilizations overseas, especially since that's impossible. That's why we called it the Defense Department until these schmucks came in and tried to illegally change it to the War Department. The War Department. Pete Hegseth calls himself War Secretary, not Defense Secretary. He's looking for a war. Well, he got one. You got your war, Pete Hegseth, and so did Trump. You're supposed to keep us safe. War doesn't keep us safe. You're supposed to defend us. And you went looking for a war, especially to kill Muslims, Pete Hegseth, because we see the tattoos on your body, and you want to kill Muslims. As you know, after Lebanon and Israel agreed to a ceasefire late last week, Iran opened the Strait of Hormuz. But by then, Trump was already blockading the Strait of Hormuz, saying, Iran doesn't get to cut off 25% of the world's oil. I do. When Iran announced Hormuz was open, Trump said the United States can't be blackmailed. Hormuz stays shut. So he shut it. And people are dying because Hormuz is shut. Now, I know it's hard to keep track of this. Trump is a merchant of chaos. Right now, if you're watching me live or listening to this, we are doing this live Sunday night. And the ceasefire with Iran expires on Wednesday. Again, nobody knows if talks in Islamabad will take place on Monday. Nobody knows if Vance is going. Maybe he's going, maybe he's not going. Trump said he's not going, now he says he is. Hormuz is open, then it's shut. So, one of the reasons I'm sticking to this new schedule, I was talking to some friends about this, I have a new schedule. Live shows at 6:05 p.m. Eastern every Sunday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday night. And I'm going to defiantly stick to this schedule because Donald Trump is a merchant of chaos, and I will not allow Trump to create chaos in my life. I can unspool Donald Trump's lies faster than that turd can tell them. So I've decided to keep a schedule as part of my effort to bring order to his chaos. I was asking a lot from my listeners. Well, I'll get to the show when I can. I'm double checking everything. And, Donald Trump, it's so chaotic. No. He's a simpleton, and he's not going to screw up my schedule. So I am defiantly doing shows live at 6:05 p.m. Eastern every Sunday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday. And I will stick to it unless something happens. And then every 8:30 p.m., 7 days a week, we're clipping highlights from the show. And then on Saturday nights at 8:30 p.m., I'm trying to do like a watch party where we watch a clip, longer clip together. That's my plan. So, and I know it's hard to keep track of what is happening. That's the plan. They have a term for it. They have a term for it at Project 2025. It's called flooding the zone. Just make so much confusion, have so many news cycles in one day, the American people just watch Netflix. So, this is what actually happened over the weekend. On Friday morning, the Iranian foreign minister declared the Strait of Hormuz is reopened. Trump later declared victory, and he announces, quote, the Strait of Hormuz is completely open and ready for business. And if you're a normal human being who doesn't follow all 24 of Trump's daily news cycles, you would hear that or read that and think, oh, Hormuz is open. It's settled. Most people figured that. The markets did. The price of oil fell 10%. Hormuz is open. But Trump, who is a merchant of chaos, immediately announced on Friday, no, the blockade is still in effect. Nobody passes through Hormuz. Why? Because he felt weak. He felt Iran doesn't get to blockade Hormuz. I do. Doesn't matter that Washington State right now is paying $7 a gallon for gas. Doesn't matter that 40 million people are going to starve in the sub-Saharan and Asia on top of the 1 billion who are already starving around the world. Doesn't matter that closing the Strait of Hormuz causes people to starve to death. Trump felt emasculated that it was Iran, not Trump, closing Hormuz. So on Friday, after Iran said, we've opened it, Trump said, I'm closing it. I have a blockade and I'm not letting up. And he says, I'm upset because I've discovered that several ships passing through Hormuz did in fact pay the $2 million per tanker toll that Iran was charging. So he shut it all down. Turns out several shipping companies paid Iran the $2 million toll. Okay. 10 news cycles later, this is on Friday, early Saturday morning, Iran declared, you know what? The strait's officially closed again. You don't get to close the strait, we do. And they began firing on several ships, including one from India. By Saturday evening, 48 news cycles later, in about 24 hours, Hormuz was pretty much locked down again, as was 20% of the world's oil. What we have right now is a double chokehold. You have Iran and the United States keeping all ships from passing through the Strait of Hormuz. On Saturday, 12 United States warships enforced, we are told by our military, but they lie, but this is what our military is claiming. 12 United States warships enforced a naval blockade forbidding any ships from leaving the Strait of Hormuz. And according to our Pentagon, which is made up of liars, but according to the liars at the Pentagon, at least 21 ships that passed through the Strait of Hormuz from the Persian Gulf were ordered by the U.S. military to turn around and head back into the Persian Gulf, and they obeyed. But that's what our Pentagon says. They're liars. They're in the business of lying to us. Like, we've wiped out 90% of Iran's navy. We've wiped out 90% of their missiles. Everywhere you look, you can find articles now saying we haven't made a dent in Iran's supply of missiles and missile launchers. We haven't made a dent in their capability to manufacture more drones. But Pete Hegseth will just lie and say, we've wiped out their entire army. We won. We won. That's why we're desperately trying to negotiate with them on Monday in Islamabad, because we won. Recruitment officers are saying because of Pete Hegseth and Trump, it's hard to get soldiers to sign up for our military. Would you trust your life in the hands of this white Christian nationalist covered in neo-Nazi tattoos who hates Muslims, who has a Deus Vult tattoo on his body, which is God, means God's will? It's what the Crusaders chanted. Would you trust your life with Pete Hegseth? Would you trust your children to send? Would you trust Pete Hegseth to send your kid into war? So, Trump, by Saturday, was declaring nobody passes through Hormuz until Iran signs a deal with the United States. This is where we are, leading into ceasefire talks in Islamabad on Monday that may or may not take place. Okay? This is the truth. This is the absolute truth as of Sunday night. Okay? Iran says no peace deal until the United States lifts its blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. The United States says we don't lift the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz until Iran signs a peace deal. The United States says no peace deal if Iran doesn't promise to stop enriching uranium. Iran says we're not giving up our uranium because every country is entitled to enrich uranium. We have no nuclear weapons program, but considering this illegal war being waged against us, why wouldn't we retain the right to hold on to our uranium as long as possible and use it as a deterrent? That's what they're saying. And then there is the issue of Israel's tenuous peace deal with Lebanon that Hezbollah seems to have acknowledged and temporarily accepted. Israel says it will no longer fire or wage war with Hezbollah, but Israel is refusing to pull out of southern Lebanon, where hundreds of thousands of Lebanese civilians have been displaced. 1.2 million Lebanese civilians have been displaced since February 28th, and hundreds of thousands have been displaced in southern Lebanon below the Litani River. So 1,000 of those several hundred thousand displaced Lebanese civilians are trying to return to southern Lebanon, to their homes. There's a 10-day ceasefire. They want to return home. Meanwhile, Benjamin Netanyahu's top leaders are already talking about annexing all of the land in Lebanon south of the Litani River to make it part of what they call Greater Israel. So I've shown you the maps, and on the next show, I'll go through the maps here. You have crazy religious zealots running Israel. They believe the Golan Heights, which was taken from Syria, the West Bank, which was won in 1967 from Jordan, and Gaza, which was won from Egypt in 1967, these crazy right-wing Jewish supremacists in Israel are openly promoting now a concept called Greater Israel, meaning Gaza, the West Bank, the Golan Heights, And now southern Lebanon, south of the Litani River, where hundreds of thousands of Lebanese civilians make their homes, will be part of Greater Israel. And they will do what they're doing in the West Bank, where they're about that the West Bank is supposed to be the core homeland for the Palestinians. Netanyahu has sent in at least 500,000 Israeli settlers who are lynching Palestinians. They're like, since this war started, there have been like 10 lynchings a day in the West Bank, Israeli settlers. They're as bad as Pete Hegseth. They follow their own, they read their own Bible, and they want to go into Lebanon and settle there. And Bernie Sanders introduced legislation to block the United States from selling bulldozers, certain weapons to Israel, and it didn't get passed. Some Democrats, including Chuck Schumer, voted against Bernie Sanders' resolution to block Israel from getting these offensive weapons, like bulldozers, to tear down homes and build Israeli settlements. So there is a 10-day ceasefire, and the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon will influence whether or not there's going to be a ceasefire between the United States and Iran. Iran is saying no ceasefire in Lebanon, no Strait of Hormuz opening up. And Hezbollah, which is if you're lucky enough not to follow this stuff, Hezbollah is the Iranian paramilitary operation inside Lebanon. It's made up of Shia Muslims from Lebanon. It was established in 1982 to protect Shia Muslims in Lebanon after the Civil War and after Israel invaded. I think Israel invaded Lebanon in 1981 to go after the Palestinians. And Iran was worried about Shia Muslims in Lebanon, so they funded and armed Hezbollah, which almost doesn't need Iran anymore. They become a political party. They have about 12 seats in the parliament. They control a lot of the illicit drug trade, above ground, below ground economy, and they do community services. They're like Hamas in Lebanon, and the Lebanon army wants Hezbollah to put down its arms, but Hezbollah won't. Israel is negotiating with Lebanon, but not Hezbollah. You negotiate with the people you're trying to kill. That would be Hezbollah, not the Lebanese army. So, yeah, I could go on, and I will. I will go on because everything's linked, everything's connected, and unless there's peace in Lebanon, Strait of Hormuz doesn't look like it's going to be opening up anytime soon. So Hezbollah, which is not the Lebanese army, it's a paramilitary, primarily in southern Lebanon, they're calling this 10-day ceasefire an insult. By the time this show ends, the ceasefire has probably been blown through. Hezbollah is saying we will settle for nothing short of total Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon. Again, Netanyahu says we will stop firing on Hezbollah, but we're not leaving southern Lebanon because we have plans for a greater Israel. And this, see this? Those are Trump's eyes when they try to explain to him what he got himself into. That's what Trump, when you try to explain, you show him a map, and this is why you stay out of the Middle East, okay? This is why you don't enter wars in the Middle East. So Iran is saying there will be no peace talks on Monday in Islamabad. They have communicated to Trump that unless Israel pulls out of southern Lebanon, Hormuz doesn't open. Trump, by Sunday evening, couldn't keep his lies straight. So all he knows how to do is sell you a condo with mold and just tell you it's all taken care of. We fixed it. We fixed it. He said Iran has agreed to allow the United States to enter Iran, quote, leisurely. That's the lie Trump told early Sunday evening. He said, no, Iran has agreed that our troops can come in to Iran leisurely and get roughly 1,000 pounds of their enriched uranium, which he said Sunday Iran is willing to part with. Iran said, lying, false. Trump says, oh, there's a deal. Iran came crawling to us for a deal. Iran says, no deal. No deal. Iran says no deal until all the economic sanctions on Iran are lifted, dating back to the Carter administration. Iran is saying no deal. We don't open up Hormuz until Iran is paid reparations for the damages inflicted by the United States during this bombing campaign, which began on February 28th. Trump was asked about it. He said, no, they're not demanding that. No, they can't wait to make a deal. This is all he knows how to do. He knows how to sell a condo riddled with mold, rats, and cockroaches and say, no, that's you're looking at an inspector's report from 10 years ago. That's all been taken care of. It's lying. Trump says, no, it's all settled. Trump said Iran, this is what he said Sunday, Iran is ready to agree that they will never close the Strait of Hormuz ever again. On Sunday, Iran said, well, we just closed Hormuz again, and we will never give up this power that we have over the global economy. Would you? So maybe Trump doesn't know he's in hell, but he sure as hell dragging the rest of the world into it. He is powerless. He is powerless when it comes to reopening Hormuz. The shutting down of Hormuz is the worst shock to the world's energy supply in recorded history. 500 million barrels of crude oil have been taken off the market. He never thought they would do this, but nobody thought he would bomb Tehran with no provocation. He still hasn't told us why. He still can't come up with a reason for this war. This shutting of Hormuz is causing, as you all know, a massive shock to the commodities market. We are looking, as I said, we're looking now at 45 million people living in the sub-Saharan and Asia plunged into hunger by June unless Hormuz opens. Unfortunately, you can't make fertilizer without liquid natural gas. I don't know enough about farming. I'm sure there are ways to do it, but on an industrial scale, they've settled on liquid natural gas, and 20% of the world's liquid natural gas must pass through Hormuz. So people who manufacture fertilizer around the world have lost 20% of the world's natural gas. And then the Persian Gulf manufactures fertilizer, and they manufacture 25% of the world's fertilizer. There are tankers filled with fertilizer stuck in the Persian Gulf that can't get through the Strait of Hormuz. To explain this in a way that Trump would understand, it is estimated that the cost of a Big Mac, what you're paying for, 25% of what a Big Mac costs to make is fertilizer, which explains why it tastes like shit. 25% fertilizer. So, Hormuz, and wait, it gets worse. This is a multi-trillion-dollar chokehold with more than 20,000 ships, hundreds of tankers loaded up, raring to go in the Persian Gulf, and they can't deliver the fuel that keeps the economy moving and the fuel that keeps the world fed. The clock is ticking on this. This is the wrong person is sitting in the Oval Office right now. Americans are used to cheap gas. Right now, most of us are used to paying $5 a gallon. And as I said earlier, in the state of Washington, the price of a gallon of gas, $7. Since Trump launched this illegal war on February 28th, the average price of gas has shot up $1. American families have had to pay on average, are expected this year to pay on average, an extra $1,000 on heating oil this year. Because why? In 1 month, home heating prices have soared 30%. The American family, on average, is expected to pay an additional $2,000 a year to fill up their cars. When Trump took office, it cost $2.37 a gallon, on average, to fill up your tank. $2.37 a gallon to fill up your tank. More than doubled. $5. Washington State, $7. Great news if you're ExxonMobil, who put Donald Trump into office. Charge more, you double your profits. That's the way it works. They get to double their profits. But for the rest of us, it's life and death. That's why Trump was in Las Vegas bragging about no tax on tips, which is BS. He knows this is why his polling is down. MAGA has turned on him, not just because they're against forever wars. They know what it costs now to fill up. The International Monetary Fund is warning, if we're lucky, they're saying if we're lucky, the world will enter into a global recession. If we're lucky, they say it won't be a depression. They say if we're lucky, growth will decline by 2%. If we're lucky. The Bank of England is not only warning of a global recession, but also of massive inflation. Well, you're not supposed to have inflation and a recession at the same time. That hasn't really happened since the 70s. It's called stagflation. It means people are out of work, but prices keep going up. And that leaves the central banks powerless, which they should be, but they don't know what to do if there's inflation and unemployment. The Bank of England is now saying there's no way they're going to lower interest rates to jumpstart this fading economy. They're saying, look, the economy is fading, but we also have inflation, and if we lower interest rates, cheap money means inflation. We think, nobody's quite sure. So cheap money is what Donald Trump lives on because he's the king of debt. And this is why he's trying to get the chairman of the Fed pretty much arrested because he won't lower interest rates. Powell won't lower interest rates. Trump wants cheap money. But the central bank in England and here in the United States are saying, no, there isn't going to be cheap money. And now we come to the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which I've been warning you about. the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is coming into the crosshairs as the Houthis once again warned America and Israel. This is what the Houthis are saying. We saw what shutting down Hormuz has done to you. We will shut down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait unless Israel pulls out of southern Lebanon. So these maps are important. I know most people don't like geography. This will take 30 seconds. There's Iran. There is the Strait of Hormuz, okay? You see the Gulf of Oman underneath the arrow. Then to the left is the Persian Gulf. In order for Kuwait, Iran, Iraq, Bahrain, UAE, and Saudi Arabia to get its oil from the Persian Gulf to the market, it has to go through the Gulf of Oman and then to the Arabian Sea. But in order to get to the Gulf of Oman, you have to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, which they can't. Saudi Arabia, most of its oil is in the east, in the Persian Gulf. It does have access to the Red Sea, so it's beginning to ship some oil through the Red Sea, but it's inefficient to do it that way. That's the Red Sea. And right there you have the Suez Canal. Everybody knows what the Suez Canal is. 30% of the world's container ships pass through the Suez Canal. It is what created major trade between Europe and Asia. Very important. Suez Canal. Now, over here you have the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Got to go through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait in order to enter the Red Sea and then pass through the Suez Canal. If you close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, just the same way the Iranians closed the Strait of Hormuz, nobody can enter the Suez Canal. And all it takes, as Donald Trump says, is one guy with a missile or a drone, and Lloyd's of London won't insure any tankers. Now, we know that that is Yemen, and the Houthis were firing on ships in the Red Sea a year ago, which is why we bombed Yemen. They're still firing into Israel. They are the Houthis, and they are Shia, as is Iran. Iran uses the Houthis as proxy fighters against Saudi Arabia, which is Sunni. Iran and Saudi Arabia are struggling for geopolitical control of the Persian Gulf. In Yemen, you've got the Houthis who are fighting the Saudi Arabians, and they're getting money and support from Iran. And now the Houthis are saying, hey, we're going to close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Okay? I know I'm a broken record, and I keep showing you this map, but if you don't look at maps, you don't know why your kids are being sent off to war. If everybody looked at a map and knew where these countries were and why the wars are really being fought, we wouldn't be spending $1 trillion or $1.5 trillion a year on missiles we don't need, and we wouldn't be trapped in these wars. You'd look at this effing map and say, are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind? So right now, the oil companies are doing fantastic. In a month, they've made an extra close to $20 billion more because the price of petroleum has gone up, right? If it costs more to buy a barrel of oil, they're going to charge you more, and that doubles their profits. If you shut down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, then something like 30% of the world's container shippers, which have to pass through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait in order to get to the Suez Canal, you're looking at something far worse than what the International Monetary Fund is warning about. we're not looking at a recession with higher prices. We are looking at a global depression with commodities that are just priced astronomically. That is far beyond anything this world has ever seen, where you have a massive depression and commodities that nobody can afford. It's all been created by. There has to be. It's not stagflation. It's like a Trump session. I think that's the word for it. A Trump session. We've got to call this World War Trump because he started it. And when the bottom falls out of the economy, unless Hormuz opens and if they close Bab el-Mandeb Strait, it's a Trump session. The clock is ticking. The clock is ticking. I don't know. Maybe when the show when the show first started, Iran was saying no peace talks in Islamabad on Monday. I'm hoping by the time the show is over, there is. Let me check. Let me go to my sources here and see if maybe the news is better. Nope. Still no talks. Iran vows retaliation in response to the United States seizing an Iranian cargo ship, calling it a violation of the ceasefire. So, clock is ticking. Clock is ticking. Europe will be out of jet fuel by June. It's April 19th. Europe runs out of jet fuel by June. 69% of Europe's jet fuel has to go through the Strait of Hormuz. The International Energy Agency says Europe has 6 weeks left of jet fuel. China, which supposedly has enough oil, has begun canceling flights on their state-owned airlines. In Germany, Lufthansa grounded 27 aircraft. It's drastically cutting back on all its long-haul flights. And here in the United States, when they cut back on jet travel, that's devastating to America's tourist industry. And without tourists, without Europeans visiting America, who is ICE going to keep in these detention facilities? It's what, come to America, visit America, and you might end up in an ICE detention facility. Free room and board. Come to America. Alligator Alcatraz awaits you. Well, now people can't, there are no flights to stay at Alligator Alcatraz. Diesel costs in the United States have already jumped 50% in the past month. And that makes trucking unaffordable. That's hurting the trucking industry. And farmers. Farming is becoming unaffordable thanks to World War Trump. And we're right in the middle of planting season. Some farmers are reporting a 75% increase in the cost of fertilizer. And we have a lot of farmers, especially in Ohio, who were planning for 2026 to be the rebound year when they were hoping to recover from horrible drought, which destroyed so much of their crops last year. Of course, the drought is caused by what comes out of the Strait of Hormuz. It's a catch-22. We should be using this as an opportunity to switch to wind and solar. The clock is ticking. The ceasefire ends Wednesday morning. The United States, as I just told you, just fired on an Iranian cargo ship in the Gulf of Oman. It looks, and I'm hoping this changes later tonight, peace talks in Islamabad which are now more necessary than ever and seemingly less likely. 20,000 Pakistani soldiers and intelligence officers are locking down the city of Islamabad right now in the hope that peace talks will resume at the Serena Hotel on Monday. Trump insisting the peace talks are still on. He claims Steve Witkoff, that genius, and Jared Kushner, another genius, they're on their way to Islamabad. You know they're going to get rich off this somehow. And maybe Vice President J.D. Vance. There's been no confirmation from Iranian Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf. He's the Speaker of the Parliament. He attended the last talks. He has not confirmed that he will be in attendance, and Iran is saying, we're not going. Congress has a deadline coming up on May 1st. That's when Trump's illegal war in Iran will have reached the 60-day point. It'll be 60 days old. And according to the War Powers Act, which was passed in 1973 after the Vietnam War ended, according to the War Powers Act, a president is not allowed to carry on an overseas war without congressional authorization past 60 days. So on May 1st, this war becomes illegal. That's why Trump calls it an excursion. That's why Mike Johnson says it's not a war. See, Republicans are insisting it's not a war. They're saying, well, we don't have troops in harm's way. It's not a war. Really? Because 300 wounded, 12 dead? Really? It's not a war. On May 1st, Donald Trump must withdraw all troops and ships unless he gets an official war authorization from Congress. So it's doubtful the Republican-controlled House and Senate will take a vote on a war authorization. They will say it's not a war. Efforts by Democrats in the Senate and the House to vote now on a war authorization, those efforts have failed. There was an attempt in the House of Representatives last week to vote on a war authorization. It failed by one vote. This suggests that one of two things are going to happen. There will be a vote on May 1st, or Trump is sued and it goes before the Supreme Court because he's in violation of the War Powers Act in 1973. And you know the Supreme Court, they'll get to this case after Trump is 90. The other issue is the $200 billion war supplemental. Can't have a war unless somebody's getting rich. War is about looting the national treasury, transferring the nation's wealth to the military-industrial complex. Right now, Raytheon, and they changed their name, but Boeing and Lockheed Martin and all those splendid people, and Don and Eric Trump, Don Jr. and Eric Trump are sitting on the board of some drone manufacturing company. They want to transfer our nation's wealth to the military-industrial complex. They want $200 billion now. Do you think that's going to pass? If you don't pass the war supplemental, then it is no longer profitable for the military-industrial complex, and Trump has to stop. Trump will have to stop. We'll see what happens. Call your congressman. Obey your pope. The pope says call your member of Congress and say, do not support this war. Where are we? This is the mop-up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. We're sticking to a schedule, 6:05 p.m. Eastern live. I'm going live at 6:05 p.m. Eastern on Sunday nights, Tuesday nights, and Thursday nights. And I'm going to try to stick to that schedule. And then every day of the week, 7 days a week, at exactly 8:30 p.m., we post a clip, a highlight from the live stream. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. It was great talking with everybody. Saturday night, we had a little watch party. I'm going to try to do those every Saturday night at 8:30 p.m., where I run a longer clip at 8:30 p.m., and I sit in the chat room and get to meet some of my listeners. So, it's not just our Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, who's the only falling down drunk inside the White House. We always think nobody can be plagued with imposter syndrome more than our inadequate, self-loathing, white Christian nationalist, alcoholic defense chief, Pete Hegseth. Turns out the Trump White House is filled with a lot of half-men who drown self-loathing and self-doubt in alcohol. FBI Director Kash Patel, according to new reporting in The Atlantic magazine, Kash Patel is a serious drunk who disappears for long stretches on benders, then shows up to work late, only to rage at employees in his deliriums of paranoia. Sleep well, America. We're in good hands. We're in good hands. The Atlantic magazine out with this scathing profile of the odious Kash Patel, describing him as pretty much unhinged, paranoid, and drunk. As recently as April 10th, that would be, 9 days ago, Patel tried to log into his computer at the FBI. And suddenly, he began to panic because his password didn't work. And a responsible FBI chief would look into why he can't log in. Instead, Kash Patel, because he was probably hungover, began screaming at the top of his lungs, cursing Trump, screaming, "I've been fired. That's why I can't get into my computer." This is the head of the FBI. Okay? Then, instead of calling in the IT guy and saying, "Why can't I log into my computer?" Kash Patel, he got on the phone and began calling all his political MAGA allies at think tanks and on Capitol Hill, accusing Trump of firing him. He said they fired Bondi, and now I'm getting fired. So Pam Bondi was fired on April 2nd, and there were rumors that Kash Patel was next. According to Atlantic magazine, this was April 10th, the phones on Capitol Hill, inside the White House, and at the FBI, and at right-wing think tanks were heating up with people wondering who the hell is in charge of the FBI. Kash Patel is freaking out, screaming he's been fired, raging, telling friends and allies, "I'm going to get even with the White House." And everyone momentarily believed Kash Patel had been fired and that Kash was going to go to the mattresses and tell the truth about Donald Trump, like we need to be told the truth about Donald Trump. What prompted this? He couldn't log in to his computer at the FBI. But according to Atlantic magazine, it turns out he hasn't been fired. He wasn't fired. There was just a little glitch. There was a little glitch with his computer. The FBI computers were getting, I guess, what amounted to a software update, and he couldn't log in. All he needed to do was call in the IT guy to explain that to him. But apparently, when you're drinking a lot and you're already paranoid and stupid, you rush to conclusions that are inaccurate, which makes you qualified to run the FBI. And we've seen him do that with Charlie Kirk's shooter. We've seen him make announcements that weren't true. According to The Atlantic, White House sources are telling The Atlantic Trump is, in fact, getting ready to fire Kash Patel. And FBI sources are also telling The Atlantic magazine that everyone at the FBI is expecting Patel to go, and everyone at the FBI can't wait for him to go. So the story about Patel has always been that he's paranoid and incompetent. Some of us weren't quite sure about how bad the drinking is. According to The Atlantic, the paranoia is really bad, and we knew about this. The Atlantic magazine didn't break this story. Kash Patel is forcing FBI agents to take lie detector tests in order to keep their job at the FBI. And they take lie detector tests in order to determine not just their loyalty to Donald Trump, but their loyalty to Kash Patel as well. Agents are strapped up to these lie detectors and are asked, have you ever in private said something disparaging about Kash Patel? Who hasn't said something disparaging? Who hasn't said something disparaging about their boss? So the only correct answer is yes, and that's going to get you fired. If you say no, well, lie detectors are inaccurate. They're not. Okay. This is the height of paranoia. This is Nazi shit. According to Atlantic magazine, it is official policy for FBI agents and certainly the FBI chief to refrain from drinking. Now, we all saw photographs of Kash Patel getting hammered with the Olympic hockey team, and Trump, according to the Atlantic magazine, was ready to fire Kash Patel right there because Trump doesn't drink and his older brother died from alcohol. So Trump is a teetotaler or whatever you call that. Insiders tell the Atlantic magazine that Patel's drinking has become a national security liability. Patel is spotted drunk in some elite Washington, D.C. clubs, as well as, I believe it's called the Poodle Lounge in Las Vegas. That he's in Las Vegas practically every weekend at the Poodle Lounge getting Trump-faced. According to The Atlantic, Patel was once so drunk, this is while he is FBI director, he was so drunk he slept through a wake-up call. Agents were forced to pound on his door, but he wouldn't respond, and a SWAT team had to be called in to crack open his door to make sure he was okay. That's how hungover Kash Patel is. You cannot be in Trump's orbit unless you're Kash Patel, a moral and intellectual defect. He's a defective. You cannot be in Trump's orbit unless you're defective. I'm David Feldman reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you very much for listening to me. My next show is Tuesday. Yes, Tuesday at 6:05 p.m. Eastern live. I go live at 6:05 p.m. Tuesday night, 6:05 Eastern on Tuesday night. Every night of the week at 8:30 p.m. There's a short clip from these live streams. And thank you to Bob and Mila. It was a lot of fun talking with everybody in the chat room yesterday. Please like this episode so I remain in your... I'm supposed to do this at the top of the show. Pretend this is the top of the show. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Please subscribe to my channel, to my newsletter. Please, what? I'm so tired now. I was having so much fun. And then when I have to do the stuff that reminds me that I'm a failure, all of a sudden I get sleepy, like asking you to subscribe and hit the like button, all the things that remind me that I'm spitting in the wind, make me exhausted. I am not going to succumb to this chaos. He's too stupid. Okay. Oh, if I made any mistakes, please correct me in the chat room. That's it. Thank you so much for showing up and listening to me. I don't know what I would do right now if I didn't have this outlet. I don't know what I would do. Thank you.